Howdy, folks. Welcome to Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb. I am the redneck, and you bet I've gone green, and I'm trying to convince you to do it too. As always, I want to remind listeners and viewers that the reason that we say gone green are for two very important reasons. The first is deep ecology, not merely environmentalism or conservation, but a genuine understanding of the interconnectedness of all of life. And whether you come at this from a hard science perspective, or you come at it from an eco-spiritual feminist perspective, or like me, you say they are both equally true, I will just say we are all connected. Whatever we do to this web of life, we will ultimately do to ourselves. The second reason that we say go green is because I mean Green Party. I am an unapologetic member and supporter of the Green Party. I was the Green Party nominee for president in 2004. I managed the Jill Stein Ajamu Baraka campaign in 2016. I am an unapologetic, unrepentant Green Party member because I know that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are basically two sides to the same coin. That is to say, yes, there are differences, but there is fundamental agreement between empire. There is fundamental agreement about capitalism. There is fundamental agreement about who runs and controls and how society is organized. So I believe that it is actually the smartest, most intelligent thing to build independent politics, just like I think it's important to build independent politics outside of elections, independent movements, independent media. That's why we do Redneck Gone Green. And with that, it is my extreme pleasure to introduce our guest this week on Redneck Gone Green, Lee Camp. I know him as the Occupy comic. You might know him as the most censored comedian in the U.S., or maybe you don't know him because he is the most censored comedian in America.
Okay.
Lee Camp, welcome to Redneck Gone Green.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. How many more years do we have before the youngins coming along go, what's Occupy?
You know, that's a good question. That's a good question. So I'm going to ask you, Lee Camp, because that's where we met each other. What the hell was Occupy and why were you there?
Oh, man. Well, it was fairly early in my kind of political awakening. I mean, I'd been an activist since before 2006, I guess, but I didn't really wake up to the Democrat Republican charade until really clearly 2009. So, you know, just a couple of years in, I from that awakening, I found out about. I was actually asked to do a video doing a call for an occupation and move your money. It was on January 14th of that year. And I can't remember who initially asked me to do that video, but so I did that video. June 14th came and went. Some people moved their money. It didn't really do much, but then you had people say, let's do it again. And you had bigger outlets get involved and bigger people speaking. And then of course, September hit off, and I was there the first night in New York, and you know, it meant a lot of things to a lot of people, but I guess the heart of it was the rich are screwing over everyone, destroying our future, and this is a rigged system to enrich them more while so many people suffer. And there was a lot of beauty around Occupy. I remember especially that first week, I volunteered to go wheat pasting and putting up posters saying, you know, it's happening, it's going down, Zuccotti Park. And then, of course, it also woke me up to the extreme fascist suppression that you will see if a protest movement like that starts to gain ground. And did they come after people and start arresting everyone and fence in the entire park, and they had police surveillance 24/7. By the end of it, I think about half of the people at the park were undercover police.
You know, Lee, it's really worth pointing out. You may not know this. You know, folks, Lee Camp and I actually met at Occupy. I don't know if you remember, Lee, but you actually went on just before I did at one of the big rallies. And
Okay.
I had never heard of you, but you were funny as shit. And I was like, because I was like, you know, I was ready to rile the crowd up, and I just went off and go, man, that guy's funny, right? And the crowd erupted. Again, I'll never forget like little golden moments like that. So that's actually where we met. And I'm going to take you back even further because, as you now know, I helped to co-found a group called Move to Amend. This was
Yep.
in reaction to the horrific Citizens United decision that basically, and remember, it's not just that corporations can give money in elections, it's that corporations have inherent constitutional rights. It's a completely illegitimate court-created doctrine that means corporate lawyers can go into court and overturn any democratically enacted law, whether it's to control their ability to corrupt our elections with money or overturn environmental protection laws, worker safety laws, public health laws, right? So the point is, I'm touring the country for Move to Amend, and I call Kali Lawson. Folks, Kali Lawson is the publisher, founder of Adbusters magazine. And he's an Estonian Canadian cat, right? He's got to be 80 now, right? But this was back then, a long time ago. We're both getting old, Lee. But the point is, I call Kali and I say, because I'd been part of the global justice movement in the 90s with him, right? And I was like, hey, we're launching this campaign to abolish corporate constitutional rights. I think Adbusters ought to go all in on this because it is a strategic plan to actually address not just corporate power, but corporate rule, right? And I'll never forget because he says, David, no, the moment is zeitgeist is completely different. Ignados in Spain, and now we will do, because this is me garbling an Estonian Canadian accent, right? No, but this is the thing, like Akapa, we will do Zuccotti Park in New York City. We are going to take it over. And I remember saying, dude, I am tired of shouting at buildings. We did that for decades during the 90s and the early 2000s. Like, that doesn't work. And he was like, you're missing the point. It's this moment. And I said, no, you're missing the point. We need an actual campaign. And so, like, we didn't end badly, but like, I just kept going on Move to Amend. Then Occupy launched. And I tell that story both on myself, but also to say, Kali was right, I was wrong. And I was right and he was wrong. If we could have just somehow been able to take the zeitgeist of occupying physical space, public space, and demanding it, and we are the 99%, and tied it to an actual campaign like Move to Amend was, I might have been onto something.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So which sort of leads me into, Lee, one of the things that I've seen from you is a constant effort to be a truth teller, where truth tellers are not only not rewarded, but genuinely suppressed. So again, you I came to know you on the left as the Occupy comic. You were really ascendant, at least in movement circles, right? You were touring. You became a kind of a phenomenon, a cultural phenomenon. I literally think, you're our generation's Bill Hicks. You're our generation's George Carlin. And I know that, like, you're modest. I'm not too kind. I mean, I'm kind, but it's true, right? Like, your insightful analysis of the moment and then being willing to talk about it in ways that are hilarious. It's really reminiscent.
I will put it this way. I would never claim to be George Carlin, be the same as George Carlin, or any of those things. His daughter has been so gracious and kind to me, and Kelly's a wonderful human being. But she did the opening, little opening bit to one of my albums, and in it she said, "I'm one of a handful keeping her father's torch lit." So I'll take that.
Yeah, and because I read your bio, brother, and you also had the brother of Bill Hicks say more or less the same thing about you. So I'm not the only one making that observation. People very close to Bill Hicks and George Carlin have the same observation. But the point I really want to get to, Lee, is I saw you really rising, and I saw you on RT America, Russia Today. Let's be very clear, that a Russian media source that existed in DC. And you were really rising, right? And you became pretty early shadow banned by Facebook. Then I understand you literally were forbidden from even using Facebook ads. Even like, that's something when you get so banned that they won't even take your money. Like, That's the
Totally.
thing.
Totally.
So I'm curious to know, like, how did the RT America gig come about? What did you learn there? Uh, just any insights or observations you've got there.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're talking about making a choice to follow truth and justice and equality, even when it can be harmful to a career. Now, it's harmful to many types of careers, whether you're a producer at a news channel or you're Edward Snowden or what have you. If you try and follow real, true truth, justice, equality. Um, and part of it started as naivete. I was doing stand-up comedy. All I wanted to ever be was a stand-up comic for many, many years. And I had become awakened to the reality of our world, to the two-party crap show we got going on. And I felt like I'm going to be on stage every night. I mean, I was on stage every night. Many times I was doing 3 shows in New York City every night of the week. I was touring colleges. I performed at 600 colleges over a span of about 5 years. And I felt like if I'm going to be on stage and I'm going to be speaking to people, and it's one of the few art forms, stand-up comedy is almost the only art form that remains in American culture in which you get onto a stage in front of an audience and they want to watch you speak your mind. There are very few others that exist almost, unless you're a politician running for office or something. And I felt like
And
if I'm
then
going to
they
be
want you to, then you really got to tell the lie.
yeah. Then you have to full lie. But so I felt like if I'm going to be on a stage and I'm going to have this time, I should talk about something important. It just felt, it felt very much like that's what I wanted to do. I still kept some of the kind of abstract, unimportant, but still hilarious comedy in my act. But most of it became very political. And I didn't realize at the time that it shuts so many doors. I mean, you are not going to be allowed on late night television, and if you are allowed on one of these channels, it's a exception that proves the rule, and they will never have you back. I was on, CNN one time, MSNBC one time, Fox News one time, and Comedy Central one time, and they never want anything to do with you again because they realize you aren't going to play the game. You're actually going to call out the system that is not allowed to really be named on mainstream media. And and so started as me being naive about the whole thing. But then as it really did start to impact my career, my college work, which was paying the bills, dried up because they would Google me and find out what I was, and they didn't want someone political at their college. Right as that happened, I mean, I guess maybe I had 2 years of hardly making an income. And then I start doing guest spots on RT America, which is, was an American broadcast channel. It's now been sanctioned into oblivion, so it doesn't exist anymore. But I started doing guest spots, and then RT America decided they wanted a comedy show. It is their only ever a comedy show. They never had another. They never done one before. And they basically brought me in and said, "Can you create a comedy show once a week?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And as long as I'm not, told what to say. And I never was. I was completely free to speak my mind and do my show. And I never changed my opinions from what they were before RT America. And I knew while I was there, because at that point I understood most of Hollywood and the industry and television industry. I knew there would never be, it was amazing it existed at all, a national and international TV channel centered in America, with Americans talking about the American empire in an actual, truthful, critical manner, going after capitalism, going after these monsters, these parasites, these vampires that are in our Congress and in our government that are creating the environmental destruction that means that we will not have a future and our grandkids will not have a future. And to go after it full throatedly, as opposed to one occasional segment. You may find one weird, awry segment on, Jon Stewart's Daily Show or something like that, but it's not every day. It's not beating away at the truth. And I knew it would never exist again. And I was amazed it existed at all. And the whole 8 years, I did 8 years of writing my own show, performing my own show, with a couple of amazing correspondents, but I wrote all my own stuff. And And sure enough, it got sanctioned into oblivion. The YouTube channel got banned around the world, which there's very little on YouTube I've ever found banned around the world. There's a lot demonetized. There's very little that is banned around the world. That channel is banned around the world. And sure enough, they did come after it all. And that was the end of that.
So this seems like a perfect opportunity to remind folks that you are watching and or listening to Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb. I am the Redneck. I'm talking to Lee Camp of leecamp.com. Lee is known as the most banned comedian in the U.S. And that's why it's important that you right now like, subscribe, comment. You can subscribe to the writings on Substack, coincidentally and cleverly named Redneck Gone Green, or go to our YouTube or Rumble channels, also, surprise, surprise, titled Redneck Gone Green. I'm kind of leaning into the brand, Lee, Redneck Gone Green. But the point is, y'all, for real, please do know that conversations like this are literally not only unsanctioned by the ruling elite, but they do everything possible to suppress it. So it's sort of one of these deals where you're allowed to say these things, but we're going to make sure that we throttle any of the means of conversation. So the only way we really can break through is if folks like, subscribe, and directly communicate with us. And this audience really is growing. And speaking of breakthrough, you're still doing some comedy bits on Breakthrough News, yes?
Yeah, so my platforms now I have my independent show that I do on YouTube and Rumble called Dangerous Ideas, but the YouTube channel is Moment of Clarity, the name of my old show, and the Rumble channel is rumble.com/LeeCamp. And so I live stream 4 or 5 days a week. And then I have started doing shorter written comedy segments on Breakthrough News. So these are two very different kind of genres of performance.
I gotta say, Lee, like you're a different dude, right? Like, you know, you really are. Like it's very clear. I mean, I don't want to like but like there is a persona. There's the Lee Camp, the kind of crusty old, like, you know, you're like a younger version of the cranky old leftist. You know what I mean? Like that's at least that's how I perceive you, and it's always insightful. It's always funny, and when you are when you're Lee Camp Moment of Clarity, you're like literally breaking down, here's how capitalism, imperialism, white supremacy, and settler colonialism are interconnected. Here is how the two political parties are uniting to screw you and me and everybody else. Here's how they're lying to us, and here's how most of us are falling for it. Like it's a level of like blazing honesty that like I just don't really hear it that often.
Yeah, I'd love to have more competition, both in both in the live streams you're talking about and in the comedy world of doing this type of thing, but there really aren't that many. And I guess that's good for people finding me and going, this seems unusual. But yeah, I've always thought like, oh, eventually there'll be, 10 other people doing exactly this thing, but there really aren't that many. And I don't know. I always want to get to the heart of truth. And once you see through the matrix of the duopoly and what a show it is, what a charade it is, what a theater it is, and you see that, oh, well, at the heart of this is capitalism. At the heart of this is settler colonialism, which, of course, capitalism makes its money from settler colonialism. Like, once you see that, you can't unsee it. And it's like when what's his name, the bad guy in the Matrix, in the first Matrix, he says like, plug me back in, but I don't want to ever know.
I know this state isn't real,
yeah.
Right? Like no, that one, like wow, yes, and I get it, right? Like because here's the thing, like we were talking about before the show, Lee, I'm just going to name, you and I were just chatting it up, and we were talking as the friends that we are. And I said, you asked me how I'm doing. And I said, on a personal level, I'm great. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I've got a fantastic relationship with my junior high school sweetheart I reconnected with 11 years ago. I got a dog that gets me out and forces me to walk every day. I start every day that's not raining with coffee in a hot tub and Yes, I know that's bougie as hell, but it's really nice. In fact, my new fight, Lee, is fighting for healthcare as a human right, the access to art and education, access to reasonable shelter, and the ability to sit in hot water. Like those are human rights.
Yeah, hot tubs for all would be a new
Hot tubs for
political
all.
campaign, I
And
think.
like, so really and I do meaningful, productive work for which I'm respected by people I respect. On every level, I feel like I'm doing really well. And I got to admit, I am living in constant existential dread about
Yep.
what is happening and what I see coming.
Yep.
Right? Because like, and this is no joking matter, y'all. Actual blatant fascism is coming to America, and it's not merely Donald Trump. Let me be very clear about this. It is the social, political, economic institution to otherize, to engage in a level of, in this country, Christo nationalist, white supremacist otherization. Of course, in India and in Africa, there are black and brown skinned fascists. Nationalism is at the heart of it. In this nation, which is white supremacist, then that's what it looks like. But it's true everywhere. But at the end of the day, this fascism is rising because systems are failing. Like, fascism arose in the 1930s because we were basically, as a world economy and society, shifting from an agrarian society to an industrial one. And today, we're shifting out of industrial and even financialization into artificial intelligence, robotics, automation. Like, the entire political economy is literally being restructured. Whether we like it or not, this is a truly revolutionary moment. And this is the thing that's frightening. And for a lot of people, the fascists have a plan and they are implementing that plan. And the neoliberal Democrats are clutching their pearls and don't have a single clue about what to do about it. How am I doing, Lee?
It's so funny. You just accidentally nailed the opening theme song to back when I did Moment of Clarity, which was during the Occupy days. I had done a video saying bad people, evil people have plans. We don't have plans. You know, they sit around in boardrooms with expensive suits and whiteboards, and they crafting how to exploit and abuse everyone. Meanwhile, we're thinking if we just wander their life and treat each other right, we'll be fine. So, and then a rapper actually made a song about it. So I use that song as my theme song. So it was literally every episode started with evil people have plans. We got no plans at all.
Well, let me actually, I know you know my dear friend and comrade, Kali Akuno. I think you know Kamal Franklin of Community Movement Builders and the Stop Cop City movement. Like, there's a group of us who are coming together, and I'm going to lay out for you and listeners a plan.
Yeah,
And
no, I like you because you often have plans. You're one of the good guys with plans.
well, thank you, Lee. As my therapist has taught me to say, thank you. That makes me feel good rather than denigrating a compliment, right? Accept the compliment. But here's genuinely what I think the plan needs to be. And I'm going to start by saying I've spent my entire adult life knowing that we were on a Titanic, clearly headed for an iceberg, right? The problem was, like you and so many others, I was born in steerage class and didn't have any ability to really influence the Titanic. So I did all the things that you were supposed to do. I went through the proper channels and I told them, I lobbied, I tried to pass notes, I tried to write letters to congressperson, I ran for office, I did all the things, right? Then I realized this doesn't work. So I tried to bum rush the thing. I tried direct action. I tried nonviolent civil disobedience. I tried everything I could to get to the steering wheel, right, and try to avoid the iceberg. Lee, it brings me no joy to say it. I think that we've hit the iceberg. And so my new plan is to say we need to build as many lifeboats as we can, and we need to link those lifeboats together, and we need to captain those lifeboats like pirates, right? Like literally thinking about how do we meet people's needs objectively and materially. How do we sing good shanties and drink good rum and have good dances together? Like, play and be as joyful as we can, and then confederate. That's my plan, and I can tell you what that means.
Well, so yeah, if I can just say something about that real quick. Like what your awesome producer Jack was saying before the show, he wanted to hear about on the ground grassroots actions, and there's amazing people that do that stuff, so that are far more informed about it than I am. But I will say that that is what gives me hope, and it is so beautiful to see. Perhaps the most that I've been involved in grassroots kind of building something and helping people, as opposed to just going at and screaming at and getting arrested, the system, was the mutual aid efforts during the pandemic. And it is like you're saying, like, these are incredibly difficult and dire times, both climate crisis. And I always make the point that you could take climate crisis out of the equation and we're destroying the environment even outside of that. I mean, we are knocking down every single last forest. We are filling the oceans with plastic. So it's like, it's not just climate crisis. But anyway, and there's two reasons for that. One is what you're saying, that we need to create these wonderful worlds where people are helping each other just cause that's how we should live. And from our day to day, in the moment, if you're trying to grab some water in a river, in that moment when you get to grab the water, that's what it should be. It should be that. It should be us helping each other. It should be us spending time together and caring about each other, and enjoying equality and love and respect. And the second reason is that sometimes they appear at first smaller efforts to create another way of thinking outside of the capitalist step on your neighbor's throat to get money world. Sometimes these smaller efforts of creating a new world are what ultimately become the new world, even when they seem like they're borderline nothing. I mean, mutual aid compared to the American economy is tiny, but economist Richard Wolff has made the point that capitalism was created by bubbling out of, on the outside of the feudal system. People that were rejected and out in the woods, started bartering and selling their wares and stuff. So it's these little bubbles of a better future that you're creating that very well could become the future later.
And I love how you're actually like, look, here's the thing. We have agency over what we do. And if we do the right thing simply because we're doing the right thing, I genuinely know from lived experience that that will inspire other people to feel like not only can they do the right thing, but that there are others to do it with. So if you're listening and or watching Redneck Gone Green right now, my encouragement to you is to figure out what it is that really speaks to your soul about breaking out of this repressive society, and find ways to make connection with people, and do that thing. Do the thing that, in my cosmology, the goddess does not demand that I win. The goddess says, do your best. And so I am doing my best. And part of the way that I'm able to both maintain sanity and genuine joy, Lee, is that I know I am really doing my best, and I work hard to release the result. I don't think I have the capacity to alter the socio-political economic system alone, but what I can do is join with others to come together and do the best that I can. And there is a path forward, right? Where we can confederate those things like mycelium that ultimately overgrow this system. Not merely just overthrow it, but really overgrow it. And I'll say this, Lee, it depends on what side of the bed I wake up on, right? If I wake up on the wrong side of the bed, I say to myself, Jesus Christ, these people spend billions of dollars every year to continue to spew their toxic culture. There's just no way that we can ever win. And then other days I wake up on the other side of the bed and I say, there's no way we can lose. It takes these bastards billions of dollars to prop up this horrific racist, sexist, and class oppressive system. So as much as I can, I try to wake up on that side of the bed, right? And just lean into doing my best and releasing the result.
Yeah, you said it beautifully. I mean, I try and, to find joy, I live in the now, and to find the fight in me, I live in the future. So It's two sides, but if I only live in one of them, I am unhappy in separate ways. If I only live in the now and I just pretend that everything is, this moment, and I don't have to worry about where we, me, but also the world, but also Palestinians, where they will be a week from now, then I won't feel like I'm putting any effort in, or I'm fighting for a better world, or any of those things. And if I only live in, oh my God, climate crisis is going to kill us all, or we're going to chop down all the forests or kill all the fish. If I only live in that world, then this would be a miserable existence all the way to the end. So,
You
yeah.
know, the way I sort of think about it is what my mama called righteous anger, right? And righteous anger is a very peculiar type of anger. And so, first of all, righteous anger is only provoked by a recognition of injustice or unfairness, right? Like there's a particular kind of anger that happens. If it's just egotistical, like righteous anger really, really needs to come from a recognition that a wrong has been committed. And frankly, we should be angry about that, right? Like that is an appropriate response. And if you just stay in anger, even if it's righteous, that is toxic. That is poison. That will damage your soul. It will damage your physical body. The only way to move out of righteous anger that I've experienced is to do something, to do your best to try to solve the problem, to try to right the wrong, to try to be on the side of the good and the noble and the beautiful. And what is, at least for me, I have found that that's almost like emotional spiritual alchemy, because it takes my righteous anger and I find that it kind of transforms and transmogrifies into a kind of joy, a kind of like, I'm doing what I can to the best of my ability. I'm living a kind of a balanced life that I can be proud of, and I'm doing my best. And there really is something to that. And again, the real key, I think, is to try to find people to do that collectively, to do things in ways in your local community where you live, work, play, and pray, to actually say, here, we can actually make this difference because we have a lot more power in the local place. And then if we can confederate with other localities around, then we can build really networks of resistance. And ultimately, that resistance can become transformational. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, finding joy in your revolutionary efforts is so important. I think it was Emma Goldman who said, and I'm quoting it because my amazing partner Eleanor Goldfield quotes it a lot. She said something like, "A revolution without dancing is not one I want to be a part of."
If I can't dance at your revolution, I'm not coming.
Yeah, I'm not coming. Yeah, and it is so important to find joy in this, to find and this even goes for like the moment at a protest. Like I've had so many times, I've gone to so many protests, and on one hand, these are the most amazing people in the world. These are the people who came out, who left their homes, who didn't sit home watching Netflix, came out to the White House or wherever, to the Capitol, doesn't matter. And on their Saturday or their Sunday, took the time, and they're out there and they're demanding a better world, or they're demanding a ceasefire in Gaza, or they're demanding what have you. And all of those things we're fighting for. And I'll be there, and I feel the joy of being around these people that care. And then I also feel this like, oh, well, there's only, 100 people here. There should be 1,000. There should be 1,000,000. Why is there only 100 people? And I have to remind myself to feel the energy of the moment, feel the energy of that 100 people, rather than say, oh, but this could be, if this were just 10,000 people, this would, I feel like, yes, keep fighting for the bigger, better impacts, but to just feel the negativity of like, well, it's not as many as it could be. It's not that many. Like, then you fight for nothing, and nothing, and no revolution or revolutionary change ever feels like it's going to happen until it does.
That's right. Everything is impossible until it's not.
Exactly.
I want to let you know, Lee, Jack Hemmings, who is a frequent viewer, contributor, writes in to ask, are comedians allowed to get away with being controversial just as long as they are not anti-capitalist or critical of the establishment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Also, I see Jack's asking whether Breakthrough News is called Mint Press in the UK. No, I realize my platforms have been confusing, but I used to be at Mint Press. Now I do something for Breakthrough News. They are different things. But anyway, it's a great question from Jack. And it's a question that so many people don't understand, which kind of drives me nuts because people go, oh, well, you know, Lee Camp says he's censored or suppressed, but Jon Stewart's out there and he's not censored or suppressed, or John Oliver's out there and he's not censored or suppressed. There is a key difference. And that difference is going at capitalism regularly or going after the US empire regularly that's where the line is drawn. Going after one corporate entity, saying, oh, Amazon, you know, doing a whole segment on Amazon doesn't behave right, or they treat their workers like crap, or whatever it is, that will not get you banned if you're Jon Stewart or John Oliver. It will not even get a stern look from their producers, but it will get you, it will get you suppressed or banned if you are doing that every day. If every day this is how the system is set up, it is abusing you, it's exploiting you, wage slavery is ridiculous. Like, if that's what you're covering on a day-to-day basis, then you're persona non grata on these channels and these TV shows, etc. And the best way I can maybe put it is, I read the book about The Daily Show after Jon Stewart quit. I know he's back now, but when he first quit, they put out a book about the inner workings of The Daily Show. It's a pretty good book if you want to learn how The Daily Show works. But the one page I will always remember, one page of the book, and it said that when John or whoever, a producer, a writer, or whatever, would decide they want to do a segment going after a corporation, doesn't matter what it is, Walmart, Amazon, any of them, Google, if they were somehow connected to any advertising that went on with Comcast, Viacom, which owns Comedy Central, they would then have a representative of The Daily Show go to those companies, you know, speak to them on the phone and try and convince the company that it's cool to be made fun of on The Daily Show. And the implication was, if you are in any way connected to this giant monster, I mean, our media is owned by, 6 corporations, and one of them is the one that owns Daily Show and Comedy Central. If you are in any way connected to that, you are only going to be made fun of on The Daily Show if you approve it. And if you don't approve it, then you are not going to be attacked on The Daily Show. And that's just kind of one example of how the system works. And I was never willing to be under that thumb of, oh yeah, you get to make fun. You can make fun of Biden all day long. You make fun of Trump all day long. As long as you don't say they're the same. And as long as you don't pretend that our electoral system as it stands now is completely rigged and a complete joke. If you don't do that, then you can make fun of Trump. You can make fun of Biden. Sure.
Again, it is within the parameters of what is considered sanctioned humor, right? It is sanctioned making fun of. Mm-hmm. Dave is also a frequent listener and participant, writes in to say, everywhere I look, there's bad stuff going on. Prioritizing is not an easy thing to do, especially with daily propaganda showers. It feels like that's like right on point with what we're talking about, right?
Prioritizing is tough. I feel that just in my show. I have an hour show every day, just about on my YouTube page and my Rumble page. And I try and hit on all the most important censored topics of the U.S. empire and our world and the inverted totalitarian system in which we live. And I try, but there is so much that I can't get to because it's, we're spiraling the drain and everything's coming down with it. And it's just too much. But especially since Israel began this genocide against Gaza. And I know it matters to people, so I might as well throw it out there. I am Jewish, and this is a genocide. Ever since that started, it's like 90% of my show is about this US backed genocide in Gaza. And and I know why it's 90% of my show, because it's too horrific. It's too important. I can't get away from it and say, oh, yeah, these other things are important, but it's just really tough to find the time to talk about it when such a horror show is going on. And yeah, prioritizing is very tough, but I will just add this in there in terms of being activists and prioritizing. One thing is, most activist movements that we should all be working together in one form or another. I mean, the companies that do the horrific factory farming are connected at the hip to the companies that produce the weapons and produce the banking system that exploits so many people. Like, we should be going after all these things together. I will say that.
So I'm going to take this opportunity to open up. And by the way, before I do, I'm going to say I'm not Jewish, and it's a genocide, right? Like, so you don't have to be Jewish to be able to say that.
No. I've said both on my live stream. I go, you don't have to be Jewish to call this a genocide. And guess what? You can also be Jewish and call this a genocide.
Right. So listen, this to me is I am genuinely interested in your reaction to this, because of course Jimmy Dore sort of broke out as a comedian on the Young Turks. I'm curious what you think about Jimmy Dore.
Yeah, so me and Jimmy have a pretty long history. We were both. I wasn't a kind of employee of the Young Turks the way he was, but I was on there many times and did have our comedy YouTube channel. My comedy YouTube channel was kind of part of their umbrella for a while. Anyway, I've known Jimmy for years. I think he's a great comedian. I consider him a friend, and we've performed many times together. I opened for him here in Baltimore. He opened for me in Los Angeles. I will say that some of the topics, I think, it's not that I necessarily disagree with him. It's just to me, they don't seem like the most important thing sometimes, and I think that may come down to, like, it's tough to turn away from the thing that's getting all the clicks at the time. And I have that same pull. It's tough to pull away from I keep doing climate change segments, even though they do worse than any segments I do. And it's not easy to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep covering that thing that gets 0 clicks. It's really frustrating, but it is an ongoing fight, and that doesn't have to do with Jimmy. That's every YouTube creator or person online has that fight.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, there's always this sort of constant line to say, look, I'm trying to be a truth teller and I want to be heard. And so how do you actually balance that? And so to me, like, the question around Jimmy Dore was interesting, and I appreciated how you reacted and responded in what I would call an honest and nuanced way, and not in a cowardly nuanced way, but like it is actually hard to sort of balance that. And I got to be honestly, like, I don't agree with everything Jimmy Dore says, but you know what? I don't agree with everything I say. Like, I look back at some of the things that I've said, certainly, 10, 20 years ago, and I'm downright embarrassed about it. There are other times where literally, like, somebody will say something to me and I have to say, oh, you know what? I hadn't actually thought of it that way. Like, I see your point. I mean, like, this idea that you have to be with me or you're against me, I think is a very dangerous one.
We should all have our red lines. So if someone you thought you respected is saying, now's the time to really line up with the neo-Nazis and work with them, we should have our red lines and say, no, that's not what I'm doing. And you clearly are not the person I thought you were. So we should have those red lines. But the idea that you have to agree 100% of the time with every single statement someone says, it's actually a very useful way to tear down everybody who's doing something even remotely important or even remotely bringing you the truth of this reality, of the U.S. empire. And And we've seen it used again and again. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, so when you see someone being canceled for one statement they made, quote unquote, being canceled, I often hate the use of that term, but quote unquote being canceled for one statement they made, it may have started organically, but I do believe that, you don't have to be a genius to know that these systems are infiltrated. Most movements are infiltrated. So the energy that's often given to that person said one thing I don't like, and therefore he's dead to me. I think that's ridiculous. And I think a good example is the vax debate. I think that debate should be had. I think it should be discussed, but there are people I highly respect who I might disagree with their take on that. And there are people who I hate who I might agree with their take on that. But it doesn't mean that the people that I agree with and I think are important, it doesn't mean they should be thrown out and never heard from again because you disagree on that issue.
I want to make 2 points. I'm so glad you said that, Lee. I want to make 2 quick observations about that. One comes from, I think my mentor and dear friend, Jerome Scott. He comes out of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers and then the League of Revolutionaries for a New America. Worked with him, it moved him in. He came up and out of the 60s. I mean, this was a cat who was working at the auto plants 12-hour days. And then he and others were literally reading Das Kapital at night to try to figure out like what's going on, right? So he's like a organic intellectual of the highest order. And Jerome once told me when I was in a dispute with somebody who was a colleague and a friend and a comrade, and he said, Dave, look at here. When you are in a moment like this, really the thing to do is to be in integrity, to be principled, but to really engage that in a way that you're striving to come out of that with as much unity as you can. You have to be principled. You have to have integrity. As you said, there have to be some bright lines. But the idea is to come out of it with as much unity as possible. And then the other part, which I think is related to it, is there's a difference between principled struggle and this kind of egotistical driven cancel culture, like where you're just trying to suppress somebody else because you disagree with them. And I do think that there is like accountability, yes, but there is something really pervasive, and we're really doing the government's job whenever we actually attack other progressives or other leftists together. I think it's a real problem.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a problem. It's become a form of virtue signaling, and it's also, and I don't even mean just in public forums like Twitter and YouTube and stuff, but I know of multiple organizations that have been torn apart, or at least torn apart for a time, by people that are volunteers that get involved in their chats and everything, and then use one misstatement or one thing they disagree with to basically tear everyone apart. And it's, some of these people might be infiltrators, some of them may not, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, it's just too easy to take a group that may be working very hard for change and say, this one person who was a pivotal piece of that group said something I disagreed with, they're dead to me, and try and fire everyone up into that space. Now, again, I'm not saying there can't be red lines. There can, if someone has a pattern of behavior, then yeah, that's a different thing. But it's just too easy to rip these groups apart with, you could take 4 infiltrators in a group of 500 people and have it torn apart by Wednesday if you just follow the cancel culture playbook.
As my folks who watch and or listen to Redneck Gone Green know that I lift up my mama with great frequency, and I still remember she used to say, "We're all better than the mistakes that we make, and we all reveal ourselves by our conduct." And I want to lift up Marion, who says, "We're all allowed to evolve. That's why we're evolutionists. We're smart to change our minds. When we know better, we do better." I got to say, Marion, I appreciate that sort of sentiment. And that is genuinely, I think, what you're hearing out of me and Lee is this idea that we should do the best we can. We should be open to new information. And this is like, I forget who it was who said it, but it always tickled me. It's like, you're not much of an organizer if you can only organize with people who already agree with you.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And so, to me, Lee, this whole conversation has been really enlightening, but also kind of inspiring to realize that there's actually more of us than we realize, right? And our job really is to find ways to connect, but also to strategize and make and implement some plans, and then be willing to adjust them as we go. And that is one of the things that I've seen about your career is, man, you've had some twists and turns, and you have made adjustments as you go. And I do want to circle back to, I think, the comment about Mint Press, because I want to give you an opportunity to make sure if folks want to touch base and really stay up with Lee Camp today, what's the best platform? How do we do that?
Well, so if I'll put it in the comment thread. If people just want to remember one link, it's linktree.com/Lee Camp. That'll give you everything. It gives you my live streams. It gives you my book. It gives you my 3 podcasts. It gives you everything I got going. Now, that being said, that was linktree.com/Lee Camp. Now, that being said, I live stream 4 to 5 days a week at youtube.com/@RealLeeCamp. That's the @ Real Lee Camp. I also live stream 4 to 5 days a week at rumble.com/Lee Camp. So, yeah, one of those 3 links is where you should head. Obviously, the breakthrough news things are a separate. I mean, they only come out every few weeks, so they're not that frequent. But if people
They
want
are
those,
funny.
if people want those, they can find them on my website or at Linktree.
And are you doing any more touring these days, Lee?
I've been touring recently, not because I don't love it. I love live stand-up comedy, but there's a few reasons. One is that, COVID hit and it stopped. Even the people that wanted to go out, it was just the percentages were much lower. So now you've got to try and make money at a tour that's going to get 1/4 of the people you used to get. But on top of that, I have a new kid. A new human being is like 2 years old, so that takes ton of time. And then on top of that, one of the best ways I had to let people know I was coming to their town was Facebook ads, because you could pinpoint sending it to your fans in their city. And they banned me around, I'd say 2020, maybe 2021. They banned me from even advertising to Lee Camp fans, which is amazing because they don't ban that for right-wing neo-Nazis. Like, it was a very rare thing.
I mean, it's funny, and it's also horrific, right? Like the degree to which the corporate narrative is controlled. And I often think, it's not that they tell us what to think, but they really work hard to make sure that what we're thinking about, right? It is a level of distraction. It's a level of suppression. There is really something to I think about that great documentary. And Jack, you and I ought to actually think about revisiting that great documentary. Oh, shoot, it's jumped out of my head now. But it's the one about how corporate media actually emerged from the nephew of Sigmund Freud.
Oh, yeah, Bernays. Yeah, Bernays, yeah.
There's a special place in hell for Edward Bernays. I mean, I think there are a lot of categories where there are special places, but really Bernays deserves a very, very special one because he intentionally knew what he was doing. He knew what he was
doing. And there's interviews of him like 90 years old, absolutely standing by everything he's done and knowing what he's done. And there was no come to Jesus moment where he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I manipulated people."
He's like, "Nope, I manipulated them and I did it well and I got paid well for it." Yeah. Like, dude is completely unapologetic. Listen, Lee, we're coming to the end of the program. This hour has just really flown by. I do want to give you an opportunity for any last thoughts.
Oh, last thoughts. I just loved what we were saying about, find those grassroots movements, groups, people that give you joy in the revolution. And it is, if you look at the world and you really focus on so many things that are going on around the world, it can be really dark. And if you just focus on that, even if you're the most amazing activist in the world, you will burn out. You will find yourself quitting activism because the only thing that's survivable is to sit home and watch TV. So I don't want you to do that. I don't want anyone to do that. So instead, find the joy in the revolution.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, folks. This has been Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb. We've been speaking to Lee Camp at leecamp.com. I'll still call him the Occupy comic. Everyone recognizes that he's the most censored entertainer in America today. Next week, we're going to, I'm making a judgment call, Jackrabbit. Next week, we are, in fact, going to do a deep dive on Century of the South. That's giving myself and Jackrabbit a bit of homework, if you will, because that means that we've got to go back and pull out some clips. But I really think that this is like a program, a documentary that people need to watch. In the meantime, please do like, comment, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to us on Substack. That's where you can get links to all the YouTubes, all the Facebooks, all the Rumble video. Remember, we do a podcast as well, and writing every week. In the meantime, we're getting larger, stronger, and better organized because of you. Can't stop, won't stop. Peace.